Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chapita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're finishing up the last 4 or 5 verses of chapter 3, Dharma Yoga. And to review the 5 elements that we've been discussing. Act vigorously in the world. One does not reach freedom through inaction. How should we act? According to our Swadharma, our inherent latent proclivities, but in a specific way, in a spirit of selfless service. Serve something greater than your own ego needs. Spend yourself in love. Renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. Thy right is to work alone, never to its fruits. All we get is the work. The outcome belongs to God. And the last element, the one we've been working on, the renunciation of the sense of agency. There's no real ego doing the acting, the choosing, etc. The actor is guna and karma, the qualities of mind and the force of the past as it interacts with society at large. Who am I? I am the uninvolved, unattached witness of it all. Play our part in the world like an actor in a play. Don't get involved with it, attached to it, enmeshed with it. Maintaining Sakshi Bhava, the viewpoint, the attitude of the witness. All right, so are we on 38, Deepa?
Yes.
Would you help us out, please?
Sure. Dhumena vriyate vanir yatha darsho malena cha yathol benavrito garbhas tatha tenedamavritam. As fire is enveloped by smoke, as a mirror by dust, as an embryo by the womb, so this wisdom is enveloped by that which is desire and anger.
So we've talked, Arjuna has asked, what causes us to do what we would not do, to engage in a way of life that further grossifies the mind and entangles us more and more into a life of sorrow. And Krishna last week had said it is kama, craving. Somebody translates it as desire. It is krodha, anger. We had our definition of anger. Anger is thwarted desire, unmet expectation. And here, what Gita is implying is the whole yogic theory of vasana. So let's talk about what a vasana is. Word comes from the root vasati, which is to dwell or to linger. Has also the connotations of a fragrance. So if a woman comes to visit me and she's wearing a lovely perfume and she leaves, and another friend comes to visit and they go, oh, I smell the perfume that my friend Sheila wears. She must have been here. So it lingers, you see, a fragrance. So the definition of a vasana is this. It is an impression left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed egoistic actions. It is a subset of sanskara. Sanskara just means impression. So if you can see that there's a lamp there, how do you know it's a lamp? Someone taught you that it's a lamp. That kind of impression, that sanskara, does not cause any suffering. But a subset is the impression that has to do with I-ness and mine-ness. So if it's my car and someone smashes the window and steals my backpack, it's my backpack and my stuff has been taken and I feel violated. I-ness and mine-ness. How do these vasanas form? When we interact in the world from an egoistic standpoint, what do I mean by that? I want something. Why do I want it? Force of the past maturing, that's all. And when desire and object of desire become one, in my ignorance, I think, oh, that object is what made me so happy. Some person, place, thing, or situation. Then I have what's called chintya. Chintya in Hindi means worry. In Sanskrit, it's a little subtler. It means after the fact, mental rumination over it. Oh, that was a really good so-and-so. Oh, yeah, that brought me so much pleasure. Or, well, that was terrible. I never want to do that again. It's after the fact. And what that does, depending on the intensity of the reaction, it leaves an impression in the unconscious, which means at a future time, I'm either going to want to repeat the action if it was desirable, or make sure I avoid the action if it produced sorrow. Shankara uses the metaphor that each one of these vasanas is like the thread spun by the silkworm. One thread, no big deal. You could break it with not much trouble. But we usually don't. So we have one vasana, and then another vasana, and another vasana, and another vasana. We have millions of them. And just as the silkworm spins the silk and cocoons itself, so it is hidden. So also our wisdom, our knowledge of the self becomes cocooned, becomes covered by vasana. Now, a vasana has two powers. The first power we call a varana shakti or a vritti, which means veiling power. The second power is called vikshepa shakti. The root is kshipati, which is like to throw or to hurl a spear. And it's projecting power or agitating power. So what does the veiling power do? It robs me of self-experience. If the mind is covered by vasana, I do not know that I am the infinite Brahman. Then the second power, the projecting power, I think I'm a person. I think I'm my body, or my body plus the personality. And that feeling always has a sense of being incomplete. And then I posit a goal of some sort. The goal only takes two forms. I either need to fix the world, change people, places, things, and conditions, or I need to fix me. I'm not good enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not pretty enough. And the third element is the compulsion to make efforts to work. I need to get from where I am to where the goal is. I'll be happy when. It'll be better if. And as Shakespeare says, I grunt and sweat under a weary life. Those three elements are projected much in the same way as the mind projects the dream. Two powers: veiling power, non-apprehension of my essential nature. Second power, projecting power. I think I'm a person, I think there's a goal, and I must make efforts toward it. Am I still online? I'm seeing the little box.
Yes.
All right. So does everyone understand what a vasana is? So here Krishna says, what do these vasanas do? What is the result of living a life of craving and anger? My wisdom gets covered. Just like if you build a fire and you use green wood, there may be fire there, but it's enveloped by smoke. What was the second one? The third one is the fetus in the womb. I can't remember what the second one was, Deepa.
Sorry, let me bring it up. It's fire and smoke, mirror and dust, and embryo.
Mirror and dust?
Mirror by dust and embryo by the womb.
Yes. So if the mirror is dusty, you can't see your reflection. And then how the fetus in the womb is covered by it. So what it means is my wisdom gets veiled. Now, listen very carefully. The self does not get deluded. It's the mind that gets deluded. The self is actually still the uninvolved witness of the ignorance. I can go outside. There's a bus stop across the street. Frequently, there are homeless people who sleep in the bus stop, and go up to one of them and say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, it's very cold and I'm very hungry." And I could say, if he would converse with me, "Do you exist?" "Oh, yes." "What's your existence like?" "Miserable." "Do you know you're miserable?" "Yes, I know I'm miserable." "Give me some money." So even though his mind is miserable, even though he thinks he is his body and he has needs, the truth is he does not lack the experience. I am, I shine, I know. But in the mind, he's unaware that's who he is. So also those of us in ignorance. So it's important for us to understand this whole phenomenon of the covering of our wisdom as the result of vasana, which is the result of indiscriminate living. Any questions about this? "Oh, Jim, if there's millions of vasanas, is there no hope for me?" Well, there is. All the various practices of yoga are in some form a way to remove vasana. That's all that need be done. It's all that need be done. If I have a fire and it's enveloped by smoke, all that has to happen is the wind comes up and blows the smoke away. Oh, there's the fire. If I can't see my reflection because the mirror is covered by dust, all I have to do is remove the dust. All the mother needs to do is out comes the baby and it's no longer enveloped by the womb. So if the root of my problem is ignorance, the antidote is knowledge, not just information, not indirect knowledge, but the direct experience. I'm not the body. I'm that witnessing consciousness. All right, next one.
Avritam jnanametena jnanino nityaverina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. Enveloped, O son of Kunti, is wisdom by this constant enemy of the wise in the form of desire, which is difficult to appease.
So the root of my craving, and again, Swamiji's translating it as desire. I just don't think that's a strong enough word. You can always know the difference between a preference and an insistence. Preference is, I'd rather have coffee than tea. An insistence is, I must have this in order to be happy. And if I don't have it, I'm angry or despondent. And it's that second kind of desire, which I call craving. We have other wonderful words in Sanskrit: spriha, longing; vancha, wanting; trishna, thirsting. I want, I want, I want. That is the enemy. The cause of it is spiritual ignorance. Remember earlier in the chapter, Krishna has said, the person who gets rid of the objects of desire but allows the desire to remain behind is verily a hypocrite. You don't get rid of craving by getting rid of the objects. You get rid of the craving through insight, through understanding. And they fall away easily. Any thoughts on this? All right, next one.
Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishthanamuchyate ete eter vimohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intellect are said to be its seat. Through these, it deludes the embodied by veiling his wisdom.
Yes, the senses and the mind and the intellect are the seat of this delusion, this craving. I cannot have a desire unless my senses are engaged in the world. It is the mind then that relates to these sense objects with what we call raga and dvesha. Raga is passion for something. Dvesha is aversion. I want to be rid of something. And it is the intellect that then decides, this is good, gimme, gimme, gimme. This is bad, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. So this is the seat of it all. So you get a promotion at work. How do you know you got the promotion? Someone told you, or you got an email. Sense perception. Feel joy about it. Oh, this is really great. And the intellect says, I want more promotions. So it's the three together that become the mechanism for this karma. Next one. Oh, and then I think he ended up in this verse saying, don't let yourself come under the sway of it. Just see it. The way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. You just watch it, but have a sense of detachment. Next one. Go ahead.
Sure. Tasmatva mindriyanyado niyamya bharatarshaba papamanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, O best of the Bharatas, controlling first the senses, kill this sinful thing, the destroyer of knowledge and wisdom.
So, what we want to do is keep our energy deeply introverted. When we study Viveka Chudamani, we have the 4 qualifications of a fit student. Viveka, Vairagya, Shamaniguna, Mumukshutva. Viveka is discrimination. Discriminate between the real and the unreal. The world is essentially void. It's neutral. I decide when something's good or bad. When I understand what I'm looking for is myself, I can begin to practice vairagya, this dispassion, this letting go. Then these qualities of shama, etc., shama adi guna, qualities of shama, etc. Shama. Shama is when, well, let's see if I can give an example. So there I am in Whole Foods, pushing my little cart around. And all of a sudden I go by the dessert case. And there's a 3-layer chocolate cream cheese cake. And if I have no shama, my energy goes all over that. Oh, I want that. Practice shama. Keep that introverted. Keep the sense organs still. Don't let your energy gush out. For young people, perhaps the hardest is looking at attractive people. You see a hottie go down the street and you go, ooh, yeah. Keeping that energy tensely introverted. What I would invite you to do is start with just trying to do it for 5 or 10 minutes. Like go for a walk. And you look at the leaves on the ground, you look at a piece of paper, you look at maybe some dog poo, you look at a pretty flower, you look at a bird, and just try to not be superimposing likes and dislikes. Just direct perception of the world. This is shama. Dhamma is when I don't let the mind get pushed out towards an object by craving it because of the past. If I'm sitting here at home and I'm thinking, oh, that 3-layer chocolate cream cheese cake I saw at Whole Foods. God, that looked good. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Don't let your mind go out there like that. Now, it can be the flip side as well. You can go, how could that person have said that to me at work? Don't they know who I am? I mean, that was just so mean and I can't stand that person. See, that's your lack of Dhamma. Don't let your mind get engaged. Om Namah Shivaya. Keep it introverted. Third one he talks about is what we call uparati, sense withdrawal. It's the same as pratyahara that we have in the Raja Yoga practices, sense withdrawal. The exoteric meaning is when you're in deep meditation, you pull all your senses inside. But Shankara says the best uparati is when you're moving through the world and you see the sense objects. They don't create any vrittis. You want to have a mind like a sieve. You let all the sense perception just pass through. Just let them all pass through. Now, in the end, what you'll find is there's very intense vibrancy in the world. When we're no longer superimposing all our mental stuff, the history, the likes and dislikes. It's very vibrant. Swamiji used to call tuning up the mind. So we need to learn to do this as we move through the world. Just letting everything pass through. Be empty. Just be empty. This turns the volume level down on our reactivity. Any thoughts on this before we go on?
Hey, Jim, this is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, I'm hoping you can speak to the experience of refraining restraint and feeling at peace with it, and stringent deprivation of joy. Like when I think about, because sometimes I love how you say in some moments, you know, experience the conventional level of being human and enjoy the chocolate cake and go ahead, have it. But ultimately, if you're truly able to refrain and turn your energy inwards, then the experience of the joy of the chocolate cake is no longer as important as you thought it was. Is that right? Or close?
There are levels of practice. This is a subtler one. What we're understanding here is there is no joy in the world. That's an illusion.
Got it. Okay.
You are joy. But as long as you're saying the chocolate cake is joyful and persimmons are yucky, then your mind is still attributing the bliss to the objects. So you're right. An earlier practice is just observe. Watch your mind. Notice when you enjoy the chocolate cake. Own your bliss. The joy in the chocolate cake is not in the chocolate cake, it's really yourself. But this is a more advanced practice, beginning to pull our reactivity out of the world.
Gosh, thank you. That's super, super helpful.
There's a very famous Zen story. There are these group of Zen monks, and they have come to a river that has no bridge. And there's a woman there who wants to cross. And the senior monk says, "Would you like me to carry you across the river?" She says, "Oh, that would be very kind." So she gets on his back and he wades across the river and sets her down on the other side. And a mile or two later, one of the younger monks says, "Master, how could you have done that? We're monks. We're not supposed to touch women." And the older monk goes, "Son, I put the woman down on the other side of the river, and you are still carrying her. Meaning, his mind after the fact was still going over past events, past sense experiences. What he was missing was the intensity of simply walking along the road. He was still back at the river with the woman. So you don't, if the fruit of this practice is not nihilistic, I tell you, you'll find that there's an incredible vibrancy about everything as you more and more intensely introvert your mind. But it's completely indiscriminate. Is that helpful?
Yes. Thank you, Jim. Super, super.
Very good question. Very good question. All right. Anybody else have a question? All right. Next verse, please.
Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhyah param manah manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe paratastu sa. They say that the senses are superior to the body. Superior to the senses is the mind. Superior to the mind is the intellect. One who is even superior to the intellect is he, the Atman.
So here is a great key to how to get dominion over the equipment. Most of us, frankly, operate like just simply dogs. We are driven by the instincts of the body. As we get a little more civilized, the senses are superior to the body itself. Meaning, I can begin to determine a bit what experience brings me happiness, what experience brings me sorrow. And the mind then can begin to have control over the senses. If it's an unpleasant event, I can say, I'm not going to do that. If it's a pleasurable experience, I can say, I am going to do that. I can also withdraw my mind from the senses. See if I can give you a very real-time example. Have you ever had an ache or a pain in your body that's really been tormenting? And then you get involved in some project, like you're engrossed in a really good book, or you're watching a really exciting movie, or you're involved in a conversation with a dear friend. And while you're involved in that activity, you're not aware of the pain. Then it ends and you go, oh God, that pain in my knee is still there. We've all had that kind of experience because we can't have the sensory experience without the mind being engaged in it. So the mind is superior to the body and the senses. The intellect is superior to the mind. Through my understanding, I can sublimate the desires of the mind. Sublimate is a psychological term. Easiest way to explain it: the college kid is studying for a big exam on Monday, and it's Friday night. And her friends come to her dorm room and say, "We're going out for pizza and beer. Do you want to come with us?" And her mind says, "Oh, I'd love to go hang with my friends." But then the intellect comes in and says, "Okay, which is more important? Doing really well on this exam or the immediate pleasure of hanging with my friends?" And she says, "Oh, I really want to go, but I really want to do well on this test. So maybe next weekend." So we let go of a lesser desire for a greater desire. We've all had those kinds of experiences. People who are at the effect of the indulgent tendency of the mind, they're like children. They're whipped around through life by their likes and dislikes. So the yogi learns to not be at the effect of the likes and the dislikes of the mind. They let their higher intellect be in charge. It's not easy. You have to develop some discipline. You have to develop some discipline. And superior to the intellect is the self. So basically what we're doing is we're stilling the agitation of the mind. Now, one of the examples I like to use, of course, I grew up in Southern California, people had swimming pools. When we were young, and everybody would be in the pool and having a good time, and let's say somebody had a piece of jewelry. Let's say one of the young gals had a necklace on a chain, and the chain broke and came off, and it's down in the pool someplace. And she says, "Oh, I've lost my necklace." And so what do? Well, you say, "Everybody out of the pool," or "Everybody stand still." Why? Because then the surface agitation of the water stops. And there's just the clear water. Then you can see. Someone says, "There it is. It's down by the 4-foot mark." And then someone dives in and can get it. So our process for rediscovering ourselves is much the same. Right now, we're caught up in the fact that the surface of the mind is constantly agitated and reacting. I like this, I don't like that. I regret the past, I worry about the future. I, me, mine, what did they think of me? Am I okay? Blah, 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 blah. They said that to me, my feelings are hurt. Oh, now I'm really happy. Mind is all agitated. So these practices in these last half a dozen verses that Krishna's given us are all about bringing the mind to stillness. A pure mind. Pure mind is not a goody-goody mind. It doesn't mean I'm having nicey-nicey thoughts as opposed to vulgar thoughts. A pure mind means fewer thoughts. And in a mind very pure, it's very quiet, when you can begin to see the beginning of a thought and the end of a thought, and the space between your thoughts. The attentive faculty, introverted, turned around, investigating. Who is it who sees the thoughts and the space between the thoughts? love to use the traffic as a metaphor here. The traffic is very much like the mind. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a solid noise. But now at this hour, you hear the traffic and then there's silence before the next bunch of cars comes. Who am I? You find there's nothing there. No thing. Yet that vast emptiness, that space of consciousness shines as I. Pure and empty and peaceful. Without qualities, without characteristics. That Atma is superior to the intellect. We control the body and senses by the mind. We control the mind by the intellect. How do you control the intellect? Get out. Who is it who sees the thoughts and the space between the thoughts? Any questions about this?
Hey, Jim, it's Fang. I've got a question on this.
Yes.
My question is this on the thoughts of the thinning thoughts. Sometimes I feel that my thoughts are very vague. So it's not well-formed thoughts as I sit in meditation, right? And then the other thing that might happen is sometimes I think in visual images. So images might come up and then they go away. So there's no word thoughts. So when you think about like who is thinking the thoughts and noticing in the space between the thoughts, what happens if the thoughts are not well formulated?
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
An image, a sensation, an urge, an impulse, all of it, if you can be aware of it, it's a vritti, it's a thought, it's a movement in my field of awareness. We're not at all concerned with content. We're concerned with who knows it. So if the Blessed Virgin Mary shows up in your meditation, tell her to get lost. If the Buddha shows up, tell him to get lost. Lord Krishna shows up, tell him to take a hike. Because whatever it is that you see is just mind. Does that make it clearer, Fang?
Yeah, that makes it clear. Thanks, Jim.
If you can be aware of it, if it has a beginning and an end, if it has any qualities, characteristics, if it's in the waking, dream, and deep sleep state, if it's in the past, the present, or the future, and most importantly, if it is objectively known, drop it. It's not bad, it's just not it. So to use a grosser example, I'm trying to figure out if I have a human body. So I'm seeing the computer and I'm seeing a book. So does it matter whether or not I'm seeing a book or a computer to try to figure out that I'm the body? It's irrelevant. See, other than you. All right, going on. Is that 42, Deepa?
Yes.
We have one more then.
Yeah. Sorry, let me bring it up just a second. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanamatmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Thus, knowing him who is superior to intellect and restraining the self by the self, slay you, O mighty armed, the enemy in the form of desire, no doubt hard indeed to conquer.
So here, if probably in Swamiji's translation, you slay self with the small s by self with a large s. Is that the way he's done it?
Yes.
Yes. So here our ordinary sense of self is I am Jim, I'm the ego since I'm my body running around in the world. That is what we call ahankara. That's identification with the body. We want to slay that. How? By finding out who I really am. I am that space of consciousness. Chidananda Rupaham. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am of the form of bliss consciousness. I am auspiciousness. I am Shiva. Now, as we meditate and as we continue to let go, the mind ceases this vikshepa shakti, this projecting power, this agitation. And when the agitation starts to quieten down, the mind starts to feel blissful. I'm happy. I'm at peace. I'm content. I have some serenity. Why? Because yourself is bliss absolute. When the mind comes home, it is blissful. And in meditation, or times when we're with the teacher, we get these little tastes of this peace. It's so much more clean. It's not all fussy like stuff in the world. All the stuff in the world is so dependent. The neat thing about yourself is wherever you go, there you are. It's always available. Cannot be abused. It won't rot your liver. Doesn't cost anything. And it is learning to revel in the self. We call this Atmaramana. And the world easily falls away. Doesn't mean we go live on top of a mountain. Deepa, do you mind sharing what you were sharing with me before class about your promotion and the way you feel about
it? Yeah, so sure. I just got promoted to a higher designation in my company. And when people ask me how I feel about it, in the Vedanta sense, it feels like toys, like something external has gone from point A to point B and it doesn't matter. But in the externalized sense, when you're not really still and focused on the self, so to speak. It feels like a rewarding experience. You climb the ladder. It's a next level in the video game, and there's thrill to it.
Yeah, it's the next level in the video game. That is the best image. Yoga Vasishta has a wonderful metaphor. So you have to imagine that you're on the banks of the Ganges in the hottest part of the year. And there's a person on the bank, and they're being roasted in the sun from head to foot. But you are out in the cool waters of Mother Ganga, up to your waist. And yes, it's hot from the waist up, just like the person on the bank. But from the waist down, you're cool in the waters of Mother Ganga. So also for the yogi, doesn't mean you don't enjoy getting a promotion. Because you have this deeper reality, it's like a video game. I used to use the terms trinkets and baubles, but I like another level in the video game. I'm going to shamelessly steal that from you.
Oh, totally. It's not an original anyway.
No, it's a good metaphor for what happens. Yeah, you like being at the next level of video game, but it's not real. It doesn't affect something deep inside of us. The still point, which is never moved. It's achalam, it never moves. Never moves. So this is what this work gives us. Back in the second chapter, Krishna said to the yogi of steady wisdom, what is night to them is day to others. And what is day to that person is night to others. Meaning, all the passions of the world that people get so worked up over, at some level we're asleep to it. It doesn't move us. And we have a whole other playground. The people out there don't even know it exists. It's Atmaramana. It's revelry in the sun. All right. That finishes chapter 3, does it not?
Yes.
So there's a little Upanishad at the end.
Yes. Should I go for it?
Please. Om Tat Sat Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam. Go for it.
You were in a role, Jim. You should do it. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagwad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade Karma Yogo Nam Tritiyo Dhyayah.
Which means the third chapter in the glorious conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends entitled Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. So next week we start the 4th chapter, Jnana Yoga. So we have about 10 minutes or so for questions. You can talk about any of what we talked about tonight. We got to some very subtle stuff. So if you have questions about any of that or any other questions about your practice, please don't hesitate. No questions? Going once. Going twice. All right, we'll have a meditation then.